Welcome. Good evening and welcome to our study of Taittiriya Upanishad, where we are going to gain supreme clarity in this evening's study to close with meditation on seeing 5 basic universal layers of our personality to discover the person, pure person that you are, shining through all of these different layers. So before we get into that, we'll start in a prayerful way, allowing the mind to relax and open. That open disposition is much necessary, flowing with the lines of thought that the rishis gave us in this Upanishad, this beautiful sacred text. So I'll invite you to join me, just gently bringing the eyes to rest for some time, body relaxed and back. And we'll start by chanting Om, Pranava, the sacred mantra, 3 times as a group. Om. Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmaracharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavad Param Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Bhararayanam Sutra Bhashakratau Vande Bhagavantau punah punah Ishvaro Guru Atmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyakta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Sahaviryan Tamaskavamahay. Om
Shanti,
Shanti Shanti.
Shanti.
May we feel ourselves together to be protected, to be nourished, to feel that inner glow as our minds alight upon the scripture. A scripture meaning a sacred text which identifies you with love, you with joy, you with freedom. So may that render our minds brighter. And in that process and pursuit of knowledge, may we operate in love, peace, harmony amongst one another. Peace be, peace be, peace be. Hari Om. So the text we're studying is Taittiriya Upanishad, and we were taking this up last year itself. And we made it through about half of the text. We're in a chapter, the second chapter of 3, called Brahmanavali, the bliss of Brahman. And we saw Brahman is a key word in the entire corpus of Upanishad. Perhaps 108 Upanishad. The 10 Upanishad we study commented upon about that great luminary Adi Shankaracharya. So last week, what we really found is we were in the physical heart of the text, the core of the text. And it's surprising because within that heart, there's a heartful message. There's a very profound proclamation. And I find that to be really inspiring itself. In the very center of the text, you find a beautiful proclamation, one that makes your hair stand on end. In fact, even in the human body, the human being, as we make our way into the world, first in the development in the mother's womb, they say that the heart is the first organ which develops even before the brain. So that first message or first teaching or the heart of the text here in the Upanishad said, Brahmavid apnoti param tadesha bhukta satyam jnanam anantam brahma. In simple English, the knower of Brahman attains the supreme. So last week we had a lot of reflection and deliberation upon that particular mantra. The knower of Brahman attains the supreme. So there's this word knower, which is meaning you. Brahman, which means God, attains, then param. Param means supreme. Supreme meaning Brahman. And that the fact that knowing Brahman is attaining Brahman, we saw there's no gap between me and Brahman. There were several huge leaps that we took in reflection upon that particular mantra. So that means that the knower is essentially Brahman. So what happens is, as a result of finding an appropriate teacher, getting access to that pramana, the pramana or the scripture being operated by a teacher, what happens is a burning drive and passion for truth, a mumukshu, one who's excited and anxious for liberation, comes to be a jignasu, one who realizes that in my pursuit of trying to capture the truth or trying to draw down God from the heavens or trying to reach through my meditative practices, the teacher, through that subtle reflection on that statement, the knower of Brahman attains the supreme. What happens is, in the student's mind, a certain cognition takes place where they become a jignasu. They realize there's no gap between me and the supreme. Therefore, this is something to be understood. That's a tremendous leap, and I also call that great grace. So the knower of Brahman attains the supreme. There's also a kind of vision, not only we were talking about the importance of heart, the heart of the text we saw, but what's so special about that is, as a culture, we fundamentally feel that there's no problem for you. We're starting with that premise, that base. In philosophy, you call that ontology. What do you really think is? What is your basic worldview or vision of yourself? The Upanishad gives us a vision, what to be, and it says that you are being. You are pure being, bliss. And the word for that is Brahman. So this whole Upanishad is a reflection on Brahman. And we start by saying, you are that. This Upanishad doesn't quite say it in that way, Tattvamasi, like we see in Chandogya Upanishad. But following this declaration, the knower of Brahman attains the supreme. Brahma Veda apnoti param tadesha bhukta. That Brahman is Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. It is the very truth, which is not subject to time. It is that Chaitanya, that consciousness light, peering through your mind and eyes. And it is also Anantam. There's no boundary or division there, limitless. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam, and is to be known in the cave of your heart. Knowing which one attains all their desires. Meaning that every one of my desires is ultimately to feel free, is ultimately to be aware, is ultimately to recapture my footing in immortality, which is your nature. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So from that, there's a statement that follows. We saw this last week as well, but there's no harm in reviewing. There's a statement that said, Tasmad va etasmad atmana akasha sambhutaha, and so forth. Akashad vayuhu. Tasmat, from that Brahman, that supreme, blissful, everfull being. Tasmad va etasmat. Which is this Atmana? Which is this self? The whole creation spills forth in ecstasy. Space, air, fire, water, earth, plants and herbs, and then the beings who consume those and procreate to create multiplexity and a massive universe of other differentiated beings. So that statement, the knower Brahman attains the supreme, suddenly we become deeply contemplative and realize this is something to be understood. And what is to be understood is an equation. What was that equation? Here was tasma, from that Brahman, a tasma atmana, which is this self. So Brahman is equated to you. That is huge. In fact, that's a gain of the infinite. So we're talking about infinite knowledge here, hence why we pray. Praying in the beginning, middle, and in between and in the end. So this equation, tasma, it was said, from that indivisible, boundless Brahman, which happens to be a tasma, this Atman, Atmana, this universe has sprung forth, beginning with space. And with space comes time. Then comes differentiation, object, in the form of name, shape. So the equation to get that crystal clear vision, what we need, what is the crystal clear vision? Seeing how that statement is true, because it sounds quite blasphemous on the outset without a second look. So what we're doing this evening is we're taking a second look. And how we do that is follow the line of thinking in the Upanishad with reference to seeing the pureness on the side of I. Who is that Atman? Atman means I, or the ground of the I experience. And that first statement, tata, that, the Brahman, what is the nature of Brahman? Brahman's nature is satyam, not subject to the laws of time, always present in past, present, future. It is jnanam, knowledge itself, or consciousness, and also anantam, free from any kind of division. So can you think of an object like that? Those words itself make you deeply meditative. Satyam. What is Satyam? What is truth? Upanishad says there's some truth, and my guru is also telling me that. Incessantly saying there's some truth at all cost. So that makes me deeply contemplative. As a seeker of truth, I start thinking, what is always there? What was there? What's here now? And what's to come? Satyam. Or you just take up one word, consciousness. What really is consciousness? It is a chemical reaction. It's a later development of matter spewing and coalescing with one another. Or is there a deeper consciousness that I can explore in my memory and history? Or is there a very light that's observing my memory and the matter, which is the position that Upanishad takes, the primariness of consciousness? So you think on that word too. Or what is limitless? Then, you be smart and think of some infinite number. Okay. But each number has separation and gap. So Brahman has no gaps. That's the meaning of Anantam. There's no spatial, time, object-based gaps, or gaps in sets, or gaps between other numbers. One number is different from the next number. That number is different from another set of numbers. So tell me, what is Anantam? What you're finding is that there's no other resolve for that mystery other than yourself. I am, aham. The consciousness observing your mind is the only essence which satisfies that profound definition, satyam jnanam anantam. But that just sounds like philosophy, fluff. So what we do is panchakosha viveka. That's what we're coming to this evening, which I'm hoping that it will be fruitful and you'll be able to follow along on this journey together. So the point of saying that was that first we have to see the truth that when Upanishad equates us to Brahman, let's first understand who I am in my essence, my simple personhood, before I layer on my personality of likes and dislikes and the relationships with other things and how I take those to be my own. First, let's just be comfortable and enjoy our personhood, if you will. Word for that's Purusha. Let's just enjoy our Purusha, our person. So the way we do that is first we get clear on what does Twam or you or the Atmana, that self mean. Then we'll see what does Brahman really mean. We saw this definition, Satyam Jnanam Anantam. then what happens is, as a result, you see the unity. That statement that you are that, or you are Brahman, becomes very clear. So let's look at what these koshas are. There's a basic model that the Upanishad presents. This is the source book for this, Panchakosha. So I'm assuming that many of you have heard of Panchakosha before, and maybe some of you have not. If you've not, and it's your first time hearing this, that's perfectly okay. Panchakosha means that there are 5 basic personality layers, or layers in which we make as a human race a generalized assumption of our identity. And as a result of becoming aware of these 5 different layers or vestures in which we express ourselves through, we get to know the expressor, the person underlying them. So it's a profound way of meditation, actually. So many times in meditation, we just sit still and fall sleepy. So this reflection on these 5 sheaths is the kind of meditation where our mind is active and alert, kind of nidrudha state, a state of alertness. And by just hearing them, we become aware of that. And that awareness is transcendence. So to see, to detach, and then transcend. The profound thing about this detachment is when you know that, you overwhelm it. So that detachment is not a healthy exclusion from life, but is actually incorporating these sheaths or these layers of a personality with loving awareness. That's the way it goes. So it's a kind of discernment between what I have, what is available for me and my tool of expression, and who I am. So this is a fundamental relationship in life. It's the difference between that and I, or this and I, object and subject. So Panchakosha is a way to get real comfortable and close to subject, you as the subject, and what belongs to you or what appears to you as an object. Now, normally that's very obvious with reference to the things outside of the scope of our body. For example, I have no problem calling this, a cup. And obviously I'm not the cup. I'm standing apart, holding it, wielding it. But what Upanishad shows us is, wait a second, could you extend that same logic a little deeper to the level of the body? That in itself is so huge. I refer to it as my body. If it's known as mine, it has to be idam, this. Meaning I transcend. I'm something more. So that's what we'll see here in this Panchakosha Viveka. So there's 5. Pancha means 5, and kosha means a covering. Covering doesn't mean that you're actually, as the light of all lights, the Atman being covered. That's not possible. And neither is it even possible to cover our knowledge. But covering here means a kosha means that it's universal. We can make a mistake. It's a human predicament, or sometimes we say like the theory of estrangement or the theory of confusion. We, as human beings, make a basic error on 5 different levels. And that error is with reference to self, who we take ourselves to be. So these are 5 universal mistakes that are very easy because we're very much there with the kosha, but we don't recognize the truth of the kosha as oneself, free from all the koshas. So what are they? They are the annamaya. Annamaya means food. Pranamaya kosha. That means our physiology, or the vital winds. Manomaya, our emotional profile. It's very deep and nestled and complex, but we'll get into that. Vijnanamaya, our intellect, our discerning faculty. And then lastly, Anandamaya, the basic person, the ignorance is bliss guy, the feeling of being resolved and then losing all time-space differentiation. But then you come back and feel that it was in the licking the ice cream cone or watching a cinema. So, or just chatting it up with a good friend. But that feeling sometimes we periodically get where I'm totally cool. I'm okay. But then suddenly that goes away when somebody disturbs us with an unexpected email. So these are the 5 basic layers. There's a layer of you that's food. There's a layer of you that has a dynamic movement and energy. There's a layer of you that's the basic thinking person, deciding and then changing one's mind, emoting and relating. There's a layer of you which cognizes, very close to an observer. There's a layer of you which knows you don't know, the mystery of life. So we'll look at those and see what the Upanishad says about them. So I'm going to start us off by just chanting the first mantra that starts with this food sheath, or the part of ourselves that's very physical, the Annamaya Kosha. I just want to chant the mantra so you can hear it again and enjoy that Sanskritam. By the way, next week when we meet, once we cover these koshas, we'll also start chanting the book together, and I'll provide a PDF for everybody so we can be all on the same page. But for the time being, just listen to this mantra. It's quite interesting, and I enjoy listening to these mantras. Sava esha purusho annarasamayah tasyedameva shiraha ayam dakshinav pakshaha ayam uttarav pakshaha ayamatma a idam pucham pratishtha tadapyesha sloko bhavati. So this is the first mantra that begins this reflection upon the koshas. So the first one is called Annamaya. It's interesting here enough because the way that the rishis conceived these koshas is as a bird, which has a head, 2 wings, a belly, and a tail. So shiraha, the paksha, the wings, atma, the chest or heart of the bird, and then pucham, the tail. And so it shows the whole dimension of these sheaths envisaged as a bird. And maybe people wondering, well, I'm not a bird, so how am I supposed to relate? Maybe bird means we're flying to the truth together. Or maybe bird means be light and relaxed. Or maybe bird can mean flow with life. Catch the wind, spread yourself, and fly through this journey. Maybe these are the rishis thinking. So, what's it say? What's this kosha all about? And how do I see that I transcended and find myself as something deeper? So, the Annamaya kosha has basic dimensions. You have a physical head, you have physical arms, you have a chest, you have feet. This is not rocket science. This is grandma wisdom. This is very simple, observable fact. You have a physical body, and that body is something that's known to you. Why is it called Annamaya? Annamaya means it's born of the essence of food. Annam means food. And in fact, the Upanishad definition of that is Adyate aticha bhutani, that which is eaten by creatures and in turn eats them. It sounds like quite of a morbid idea, but it's also quite interesting. The interdependence idea. I consume food, but where's this physical body going? Back to Mother Earth, Prithivi. She consumes me. So the eater and the eaten. And what's amazing is that I borrow this material from the earth, and then the earth borrows my body, making more material. So there's a kind of cycle of life there. And that also makes us very meditative. That's why it's called Annamaya Kosha. Annamaya. So at the level of the body, one thing is if you just acknowledge the Annamaya Kosha, that's a profound realization. We all have bodies with respect to color, race, culture, shape, size. How many arguments are we having over these? This is a time-old argument and debate and discussion. But if we could just acknowledge that we all have bodies, wow, that would be amazing. We'd be able to get along so much better. So here is the level of having the physical structure. And though we're able to see the sameness in that, create that kind of unity experience, there's differentiations on the level of the body, no doubt. And you transcend that by recognizing those, noticing those. So when I say statements like, I am short, or I am a little heavier, or I could lose some weight, or My body's feeling unwell. So actually, typically we don't say statements like that. My body's feeling unwell. Typically, I'm feeling unwell, meaning I become as good as my body. But with a little bit more reflection, I see that since my body is known to me, it's going through 6 modifications from the moment I came out of the womb to my growth with the help of my mother, the parentage, the development by food alone, and the maturity, and then eventually the decay. What's interesting is the cognition that I was there as that child with a developing mind. I was there as I matured. I'm here now, trying to get my life together before my moment's end. And I was there as I left the body. So you're immortality. You are always there. The body goes through changes. So birth, some growth, sustenance, decay, death. So body goes through this kind of cycle, but I know that. So recognizing that, that means there's a deeper dimension to you. You're so much more than what happens to the body. And why that's such a big insight is that that gives you tremendous space to manage the body and have a respect for body and the material it's born out of, Prithivi, earth. So that way, actually, we should just all be worshiping Mother Earth, Prithivi. Sometimes, we try to worship things so far out, and like the devas, various gods and goddesses, and then the luminaries like sun, moon, and stars. But we're basically Earth. So we should have that respectful reverence for Mother Earth. And we see that, of course, in Hindu culture. So a few interesting things here that I want to point out is not only did it Upanishad first just bring to our attention that you're so much more being the knower of your body, but also it backs up this statement with shloka. So it seems that the rishis are not just coming up with this on their own, in their own private seclusion. It seems they also come from a wisdom tradition, which is why they say tadapesha shloko bhavati. About this Annamaya Kosha, let us give us some following shlokas, some verses on that. I find that to be really inspiring, that our rishis had teachers, though we don't have their names or the historical records of that. We see that there's a tradition involved, and that gives me a lot of devotion, feeling that I'm plugged into that. We're all plugged into this tradition. Just listening to this is a great blessing. So what are those shlokas on? There's a few things that were said there. Living beings, praja, are born of food. It's just a statement for your contemplation. Living beings are born of food. Okay, food is jeshtham. That's the word they use. They say that the food, this annamaya, is the eldest creature, the primary creature. That's a very beautiful statement and also reveals the reverence that they have in their mind. So in the transcendence, we're not discarding. That's what's, fake enlightenment, where you become aloof to life and sit in a cave. So here, the rishi in the transcendence had that kind of devotion or reverence for the earth, calling earth the first creature, the most eldest, jeshtham. Praising earth further, Rishi says that the Annamaya is sarva aushadam. This is the real medicine. Earth provides all of the medicine. It's the source of elixir that way. Sarva aushadam, medicine for all. Sarva means all. Aushadam means medicine in the form of plants and herbs. And Upanishad also shows you, you may be thinking, so I'm not sure so much about the Atman, let alone why I would want to transcend the physical body. What do I get out of it? That kind of mentality where we're looking for the result of this. Upanishad gives you one. It says, if you have this idea about the cyclical nature of life, this body being born, maturing, going back to food, and also transcending it in that watching the body change. As a result, the Upanishad says that when you respect food like that, you will never go hungry. Food will come your way. And that's our experience here at the ashram, at least. Jatani anena. All beings are born from it, sustained by it, go back to it. And it's called annam, adyate aticha bhutani, because of this relationship between the one who eats and the one who gets eaten, that cycle of life. So that gives you a deep reverence and also can kind of make your mind jostled up. I thought I was standing on top of the earth, but now I feel like earth is holding me. So which way is it? It shakes you up a little bit in a good way. Yes, Sushila, do you have a
I guess there's no vegetarianism. There's
yeah,
no
that
such
way.
thing as vegetarians then. You know what I mean?
That's an interesting way to look
Pure
at it.
vegetarian, yeah, I'm saying.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
Okay. So all these insights come when you think about this, what the Rishi is saying, eater and eaten. So this is called the physical body. But you know the body. You observe the body. You see the body. You watch it go through changes, but you're not that same boy. You're not that person anymore. You changed. Or did you? Was it the body changing? See how that shows up in our speech. I went through so many changes. Now I'm not able to perform the way I could before. Is that with reference to your body? Or are you something more? Upanishad says, yes. Take a second look. You're much more. So now we come to the pranamaya kosha. So I would say in general, most reflective people or people on the spiritual path, like in this kind of circle, aren't feeling I'm as good as the body and then propagating that, hedonistic lifestyle. So most of us feel I'm something deeper. There's some light in me or some soul or something. So then we go a little bit deeper. And interestingly enough, introducing the pranamaya kosha, the Rishi says two interesting words. There's a deeper dimension to you, and he or she says, anyaha, it's other than the physical body, and also antara, it's inner, more inner. So that inner means it's subtler, and subtler means that it's more pervasive. It includes and nourishes the physical body. And what is that? That is called pranamaya kosha. Pranamaya. Here, prana means your physiological structure. It's actually just one mother prana, one mother vital force, which of course we connect with so much as yogis with the physical breath and the soft touch behind it and the subtle depth of that. That prana or that breath we experience in 5 different ways, 5 different kinds of functions, from the way that we assimilate to the way that we assimilate or circulate or move up or down, that feeling of spreading, all the different ways that the winds move. So what's the pranamaya kosha? Let's look at that. I'll just chant the mantra so you can hear it. Tasmad va tasmad annarasamayat anyontara atma apranamayaha te naisha purnaha sava esha purusha vidha eva tasyat purusha vidhatam anvayam purusha vidaha tasyat prana eva shiraha vyano dakshinah pakshaha apana uttara pakshaha akasha atma prativi pucham pratishtha tadapyesha sloko bhavati. So the Sanskritam on what this says. But what does it mean? Purnaha. It seems that this physical body is filled and enlivened by something more subtle or inner other than the physical body, which is our vital sheath, the vital winds. Another interesting thing that's said here is Sava Esha Purusha Vida Eva. It seems that the pranamaya kosha takes the same shape as the annamaya. That's a nice insight. So there's lots of other different kinds of bodies. They also have a physiology, but it's taking the shape or nourishing or enlivening that particular body. It's so fascinating just thinking about karma theory, how we came to get this body. What is its shape? How does it work? What's its form and function? And then looking and comparing ourselves with other kinds of bodies. when you start to look at it, we're not that much different, slightly different shape, but inner equipment is similar, with perhaps the exception for deeper reflection and knowing oneself. So Seva Esha Purusha Bhita Eva, same shape, but subtler, more reflective, inner. What is this pranamaya kosha made of? To put it short, before I get into the technicality of the winds and the way they move, at this level of our being, we identify with or connect our sense of self with our energy. So whether we feel strong, energized, weak, sometimes we feel tired, dull, lazy. Think about how that shows up in our life in daily activity. I woke up, I had a good night's rest, so I'm feeling energized. So I say, I'm feeling lively. I've got that sprightliness to me because I went to bed on time. That I there means I am Satchidananda Atma. With reference to my physiology, sprightliness, because I got some good rest and the prana is flowing freely, I become that. So can I notice the difference? Can I remember my depth when I interact with my energy? I think if we thought this way, we'd be much more mindful of watching our breath, allowing it to be smooth and deep, and also be more sustainable throughout the day. We'd engage with life in such a way where we didn't overexpend our energy in useless pursuits, like too much reading, too much talking, too much eating, all that. So pranamaya kosha. Think about this in your life, how you relate with your energy. To be able to relate means that you are a point of view by which you know or interact with your energy. That means that you're so much more. That's what Upanishad's presenting. So those basic, we've been through this before, so I won't get into it too much. But those basic functions are prana, the inspiration of in and out breathing. Vyana, that circulatory system by which the nutrients you take are moved from that space through the heart all the way to the different arteries and veins. Then you have apana, the downward moving force or excretion. Then samana, from the navel up, the fire or digestive capacity in you, how your food is being broken down and assimilated. And then lastly, the ticking clock for life, udana, or the upward moving force. So upward features like burping, yawning, sneezing, they're all kind of mini samadhis, really. When you really think about it, there's not much thought when you sneeze, if any, or when you cough or yawn. But then, that silence is displaced by another thought, which is, help me stop sneezing or yawning. So then you're supposed to look in the sun or something like that. So udana, that upward moving force, that subtle force of upward movement may even constitute to the upward movement of thoughts, the churning of new thoughts in our mind. So udana. These are the 5 ways that one energy system moves and enlivens the physical body, which is known to you, which is something that changes, an observable, putting you in a deeper, more restful and stable place as an observer of the prana, the observer of your winds. How amazing. Why is that so empowering for us? Let's just think about that for a second. Next time that you feel dull or lethargic, you don't have to become that. You give the body appropriate rest in a relaxed way. Sometimes when we feel that anxiousness that I'm as good as my energy, then we feel defeated. And in that, we try to overdo, I'm trying to sleep. I'm trying to shut things down. And in fact, we're just continuing to prolong that deep rest that we need. So instead, I see myself as more, as deeper. And I also pick up where I feel that I'm lacking or needing some help with the pranamaya kosha through prayer, relating to the one who makes or gives us the prana. For us, that's Ishvara. So interesting thing that's said here, tadapyesha sloko bhavati. Rishi says, hey, I got this from my guru, and my guru got it from their guru. So here's some shlokas that back up what I'm saying. Those shlokas say some interesting things, that the devas, all living beings, and those that are luminous beings, anuprananti, they live by this prana. Also, sarvayusham, sarvayusham. Prana is the life-giving principle. What allows that shine that you are to reflect and illumine and spread throughout the body. Meaning that this is not me, this is me. Why is that? Because the consciousness reflected in my mind is expressing itself throughout the pranamaya kosha, and enlivening the physical body. So, sarvayusham. Now, what do I get? What's in it for me as a meditator or a reflective person? Not to worry, you do get something. And Upanishad promises ayuhu. They say if one has reverence, a reverential attitude towards the pranamaya kosha, they say you live your full lifespan, ayuhu. You get a full life. Sometimes we see that, which is very tragic. Some young person, their life gets cut short, maybe by a fatal accident or one wrong misstep. Why? Sometimes that's our initial question. Why? So Upanishad gives us some consolation that says if you relate to the breath or the vayu in a loving way, that vayu is what's holding this body together. And they say it's that vayu that has the power to take the mind with it to another body that's suitable for whatever experience it is that you are desiring as a desirer. So therefore, relate with the vayu or your breath in a loving way. Be friends with your breath. And then it allows you to live the full span of your life. Ayuhu. That's a very consoling and beautiful statement. And that should inspire us to practice pranayama. Be friends with your breath. That's what we're seeking in life. So much of us, I meet so many people, and what they really keep coming back to is they want a best friend. That intimacy with they could just totally relate with somebody, 100%, reflect each other like mirrors. That's happening with your breath already. And how much better if you felt that relationship and then related with another human being. Magic. So, pranamaya kosha. Now, I feel much more than that. You're right. I do see that that's a changing feature and something that I can relate to, meaning that I am a person much deeper than the pranamaya kosha. So most of us are right here, but there's this dimension called mind, manaha. What about that? The third sheath is called manomaya. So here's a mantra on that. Tasyesha eva sharira atma yah purvasya tasmadva etasmaat pranamayat anyontara atma manomaya te naisha purnaha sava esha purusha veda eva tasya purusha vedatam anvayam purusha vedaha tasya yajureva shiraha rigdakshinah pakshaha samottara pakshaha adesha atma atharvangirasa pucham pratishtha tadapyesha sloko bhavati. So what's it say? This is the mantra on manomaya kosha, that meaning the mind. In Vedanta's vision of you, or the dimensionality of you as a person, the mind is the emotional self, mostly emotion, the outgoing mind which picks up the sensate world in terms of sound and touch and sight, taste and smell. And the way that we process that information and relate with it. And there's a lot of factors involved in that, all simultaneously happening with very little awareness on our part, though we can increase that awareness and have a better understanding of it. So this is called manomaya kosha. It's anyaha, other than the pranamaya, and also antaha, deeper and more inner. Purusha vedaha, it also takes the shape of the pranamaya kosha, the subtle outlines of that vital sheath filling the body. Mind also takes that same shape. That's a very important insight. That means the way that you hold your body affects your mind. That was the premise of the Hatha yogis. If you just sit like a pyramid, mind is very balanced, lifted up. You have luminous thoughts. You have uplifting ideas when you keep your spine upright. That's the basic idea. And that's again a kind of grassroots level understanding. You just have to try that and see for yourself. The eating is in the pudding, as they say. I think I said that right. Meaning that you should just try it and see for yourself whether or not that's true. When you sit still, relaxed, and balanced, notice what happens to your mind. So, Purusha Vidaha, it's in the shape of the person, Anu, and it closely follows the Pranamaya Kosha. Again, that's another insight. If I can keep my breath deep and stable, would that affect my mind? And as you will see, yes, it does. Mind becomes more smooth and deep and stable. So how does the Rishi see the mind? What's the way in which they understand the mind? It's interesting because this bird, the way the head and the wings and chest and tail are related here are in the four Vedas. So that's a little hard for us who are not born and raised in Hindu culture and are familiar with the Vedas. But there's a deeper implication behind that, which I'll explain. They say the head of the mind is the Yajurveda. I'll come to that. The right wing is the Rig Veda. Veda means actually vid, known, to know, or knowledge. So the left is the Sama Veda. The tail is the Atharvana Veda. And they say the heart of the mind is Adesha, instruction. So how do we make sense of all this and understand or transcend the mind? Yajurveda is mostly ritual. So what is it that you practice? Your training that was involved, that you, because of your parentage or schooling system or particular culture, what were you practicing? That could mean Yajurveda, the head of the mind. Rig Veda as the right wing of the mind. What does that mean? Rig Veda can also be repetition of mantras. Rig Veda also talks about nature and the praising of nature. So maybe your environment, or maybe what you do regularly. I'm just giving some food for thought here. The left wing is Samaveda. Samaveda can mean the season or song. So the seasons or transitions that one goes through life. Pucham, the tail, is Atharvana Veda. Atharvana Veda talks a lot about magic, formulas, medicinal herbs. So perhaps this is the medicines that we take, the food that we consume, the tools that we use. So our ancients were obviously using some tools to craft, reading and writing and then cooking and cleaning and all that. We use a different set of tools, maybe not that much different in the sort of necessities that are required to be in a place of where we can reflect. But, for example, we use cell phone and have Wi-Fi and are communicating over the internet many, many miles away from each other. That's phenomenal. So that influences us. That has a deep impact on our vision of life and the mind. So Tarvana. Mind is a sound. Another idea of mind is just a vibration or a mantra. And those vibrations have certain ability to catch the light you are and experience new dimensions of yourself. So a certain way that mind wobbles or moves can be experienced like kama, lust. That feeling that without this, I'm incomplete. Or sankalpa, I get it. Vikalpa, I don't get it. Sankalpa, I know. Vikalpa, I don't know. So mind moves like that. I thought I understood that person. They were good to me. They were only saying nice things. Vikalpa, but I doubt because I heard a rumor that they were saying bad things about me. So mind moves like that. Then what happens? Bihi, I get scared. I don't want my reputation to go bad. So fear, that's another mental state. Or, the feeling of hri, feeling that modesty or, reservation to approach somebody that you really respect. That's another kind of mental state. Dhriti, feeling steady. You're so focused and then and right in alignment with what you care about. Mind can experience that too. Or shraddha, faith, and that feeling of trusting that you feel the lights dawning, so you're ready to sing your song because you know that the sun will fully rise. So these are different ways that we can understand mind as the whole landscape of emotions. So this is manomaya kosha. But are you as good as your emotions? Well, you are very much there with your emotions, meaning consciousness is there in every single emotion, obtaining there. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to know it. But are you just an emotion? Upanishad says, no, you're so much more. You know the emotions, therefore you can hold them, nurture them, let them rise, let them go. That keeps us very free. So sometimes they say mind is the heart. They use those words interchangeably in the Upanishad. Why is because heart is that basic place of where our convictions about who we are rest. And Upanishad's promoting that you keep that open and flow. Let the mind move like that sound and let it go. So this is manomaya kosha, our emotions. When you have a kind of objectivity, allowing yourself to feel without becoming it, we either do one of the opposite. We in the process of feeling, we become it, or we don't want to feel it, so we detach, and then that gets suppressed. So Upanishad presents a new way of managing emotions by observing and allowing them and holding them. So I don't throw them away and push them aside, and then they go under into unconscious mind. Nor do I keep them up, pressing against my glasses and become that. Upanishad says, take a step back, a deep breath, look at them with a smile, hold them, and then you transcend. In the holding, they make, they expand and change because mind is fluid like that. So this is manomaya kosha. The heart of this, what was the heart? I didn't get to that. The heart was adesha, instruction. That's also quite profound because your mind is also made up of many of the things that you were heard that allowed you to be safe, um, in connection with others and good standings. So, for example, that could be certain statements like, I wrote this one down, if you work harder and faster, you'll be successful. That's a kind of gnome that people use, and it may be very appropriate in this Western culture. So you heard that sometime, through teachers or loved ones, and that served them, obviously, otherwise they wouldn't be saying it, unless they're just giving advice. But anyway, whether it's true instruction or advice, that puts an impression on us, and we start to shape ourselves accordingly. So, as I was saying, mind is very fluid and can shape. Um, and so the Rishi says the heart of the mind is actually what we were taught, the Adesha. So much of that has to do with the first 12 years of our life. But not to worry, because as an adult person, we can pick up where we feel that that innocence was lost and recapture our pure nature as the Atman, thereby seeing our mind as nothing but Ishvara, an intelligently put together instrument for full expression of your goodness. So that's the idea we have in mind. Now, before we get into Vijnana Maya, which I'm already noticing we're close to time, but no rush. We'll pick it up next week. Vijnana Maya is our capacity to discern. It's the part of the mind that says, I know. And we become a knower, a doer, a thinker, a feeler. It's the feeling of being an individual and the root or source of our intelligence. The Vijnana Maya, before Upanishad comes to that, they didn't give any shloka with reference to mind. Instead, they said, Yato vacho nivartante apraapya manasa saha. They said a kind of warning, actually, that mind, along with the speech, will never be able to reach the truth. That sounds like it's a kind of disheartening statement. But the meaning of that is that don't get lost there. It's very easy in spirituality to get stuck in the level of manomaya kosha, the emotions. You know, sometimes you feel elated hearing these things, and then you feel that Brahman is just that emotion. Or sometimes you dig into the recesses of your memory, you know, doing that past life regression and all that, and then get stuck with feeling like I'm a product of my past. In fact, the whole past is right here in the present. It's burned into your current daily life. So that's enough. You just look into what's happening with you right now. That reveals so much of the past. So Upanishad Rishi say, don't dig too much. You know, set a goal, work towards that. Be a karma yogi, meaning that I surrender whatever is going to happen. I just stay focused in my work and offer that to that higher principle or whatever it is that I feel like is shedding light and love to others. And then listen. That's the methodology of Upanishad versus digging too much into the mind and then getting stuck in memory and the landscape of emotions. Emotions are so important, but may I let my emotions fill and bring nectar to my intentions, which is part of Vijnanamaya Kosha. So that's a very important statement. It said, Yato vacho nivartante apra apya manasasaha. When one discovers a self deeper than that, anandam brahmano vidvan, when one starts to get that goosebumps, I'm so much more. The mind is known to me. I see its movement and shape. And I feel that I'm not just a product of my environment and a product of what I was told, though consciousness or myself is very much involved in all that. When one starts to get that, nabibheti kadachaneti, the signature of a person like this means nabhibeti. They become fearless. Upanishad says that. When you start to know your nature as that anandam, that Brahman, fear flees from you. Why is that? Because you can look at it. You can go up to that scary thing or that scary thought, that person, place, and greet it with a smile because you have a deeper idea of yourself. You don't feel like you're subject to the modification of the mind, but instead a presence which enriches and nourishes the mind and uses the mind to express. Sa anandam brahmano vidvan na bibheti kadachaneti tasyesha eva sharira atma yat purvasya. So we're at time. I had these big intentions, you know, to cover this whole Panchakosha and then meditate on it and sit and all that. But I can get carried away and just blabber too much. So this is a really good stopping point, though, because what we'll see when we meet next week is we'll just do a review on Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya, the last two. And that does require a bit more discussion. Vijnanamaya is our intellectual realm, the realm of knowledge and also determination. The feeling when we have a cleared, settled mind and we say, I know. And Anandamaya is pure person, with the exception of knowing the truth of that person as the whole, Brahman. So all of that we'll see next week when we meet. And maybe a story on that too, to make it more relatable. So we'll close with a prayer, just a minute or so. We'll keep the eyes closed and let this sink in. The very first step of body, watching the change of the body, not being subjected to or reduced to a thing, but starting to feel oneself as a profound presence, the observer of the body. I is obviously very much in this body, but I is also not reduced to the body. You are so much more. There's a special relationship there. Bodies appearing and changing and disappearing, but you're remaining. Appearance is called mithya, play. And you are called satyam, truth, the changeless. So just stay with that for some moment. Me and my body. Where does me land? Where does my body land? The observer and the observed. Ooh, ooh, da, ooh, namidam, purnam, purnamudachyate,
Gacchate
purnasya,
Purnasya
purnamadaya,
Purnamaya
purnamevavasishyate.
Namasushyate
Om
Om
Shanti,
Shanti
Shanti,
Shanti
Shanti.
Shanti
Hari Om
Om
Sri
Sri
Guru
Gurubhyo
Namaha.
Namaha
Hari
Hari Om
Hari Om.